All right, welcome to Let Freedom Ring, a special weekend edition. I have two special guests, the two former hosts of the Ad Hominem podcast. We got Nick Paquin and Ben Grant. Ben returning to the show. Nick, first time. Welcome to the show, boys.
How's it going, Dan?
Good.
Hey, Dan. Thanks for having me. Really happy to be here. Love the work you do.
Awesome. All right. Well, here at Let Freedom Ring, we always do three questions with a new guest. So, Nick, first question for you. Where are you from? Where'd you grow
up? Originally from Manchester, New Hampshire. Now relocated to Raleigh, North Carolina area. And boy, it is a culture shock going from New Hampshire to North Carolina. Still getting used to it. It's actually really cold down here for this time of year. But I'll always have. You can take the kid out of New Hampshire. You can't take the New Hampshire out of the kid. I know you get that, Dan.
Yeah, you can't. I'm never leaving. So I mean, So, and Nick, what's one thing that everybody should know about you?
I guess the main thing I'd like for everybody to know. I mean, Dan, I know you were able to kindly introduce me as a Tom Brady hater, so people know that already. But I'm also a massive Liverpool supporter. I'm a bit bitter because they lost again this morning. But yeah, my happiness wanes by how the results of that club do. And this morning I'm not doing too well. So.
All right. So not the best. You got cold weather in North Carolina, Liverpool losing. Not a great Saturday right now.
It's fitting, but I get the show. I'm on the show, so I'm happy. Yeah.
All right, and final question. Just getting to know you, and we ask every guest this, and we get a lot of different answers. But what does it mean to you to be an American?
Oh, geez.
Loaded question.
Yeah, that's a big question, huh? I would say for me to be an American, it means opportunity, right? Like you always have opportunity at your fingertips. You have freedom of thought, which I think is more important than freedom of speech. You have freedom to choose your own path in life. I think opportunity comes to mind when I think of what I'm most proud of for being an American.
Awesome. Good answer. All right, well, let's get into current events. We got a couple things to talk about here. First thing, and hadn't talked about this on previous shows, but Gina Carano, former, I don't think she ever fought in the UFC. I think like Strike Force or something like that, but got some notoriety, ended up acting. She was on The Mandalorian, which I've yet to see, which I really need to. Heard this is like, if you're a Star Wars fan, it's unbelievable. But she was fired after some comments that she made about essentially comparing Nazi Germany to what's kind of happening right now in the country. Have you guys heard about this story or read anything up on it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan, me being Jewish, I obviously follow almost everything that is mentioned, especially in regards to anti-Semitism and just the idea of bringing Judaism or the Holocaust into any argument. So I followed it pretty closely. Nick and I have both had some dialogue on this very recently. So, I'll let him weigh in, and then we can obviously continue to.
It's a big topic, as Ben discussed too, and I think like on our show, Ben and I used to touch upon this all the time. It was so annoying to hear people draw the parallels between like Trump and Hitler, right? Like I just felt like it really kind of was a backhanded comment to things that the Jews have gone through historically. I look at this as no different. I mean, I know Ben and I have some obviously different opinions on the history and the context around what she had said. For me, I just look at it as historical inaccuracy. I think it's drawing, again, the same sort of like dangerous parallel that people do when they compare somebody like Trump to Hitler. And I mean, I think it's just a dumb comment, right? Like, I think it's stupid. Ben, I'll let you touch on your feelings on it, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, again, this stuff is close to me. My grandmother escaped from Auschwitz when she was 11 years old. If she hadn't, I wouldn't be here. If she hadn't had the courage to do that. One of her friends, who she was escaping with her sister, actually turned back and ended up dying in the concentration camp. If she had gotten scared and done the same thing, I wouldn't exist. So this stuff is close to me. What I would say, is the thing that bothers me most about the story is the hypocrisy. I agree with Nick. It's dumb in almost any situation for anybody to compare anything that's going on here in the United States directly to the Holocaust and the oppression of Jews. I will say, and I've said this before, I do see extremism on both sides. They do mirror some fascist ideals, whether it be the nationalism and bigotry of the extreme right or the cancel culture and intolerance of the extreme left. I think, both of those do come into play as far as, bordering on fascist ideology. But in terms of this, like I said, I mean, it's the hypocrisy in my mind. It just points to the bias of the media and some of these corporations. I mean, I don't agree with what Gina said entirely. But I also know that, Pedro Pascal, who's the lead actor of The Mandalorian, has posts recently on his own social media where he compares, the detention of illegal alien children to concentration camps. He put up that meme that says, it shows, I mean, it basically compares Confederate soldiers and Nazis to like the Confederate flag and the Nazi flag to a MAGA hat, which I think is ridiculous too. So it's the hypocrisy. I mean, why hasn't he caught any flack? Not saying that he should. I mean,
Yeah.
say what you want. But again, it just kind of points to the hypocrisy and the bias in media and in Hollywood, in my opinion.
And because we get a little like, I definitely think cancel culture is a thing. Because you also had the country music star who used the N-word earlier, which again, these are horrific things that they have said.
Inexcusable.
And his record sales went up. Are people getting so fed up with cancel culture that they're willing to overlook horrible things because they just think that people are just jumping down people's throats? And I mean, at the end of the day, I believe you can say the wrong thing and apologize if you mean it and be forgiven. Or are we past that point in our culture?
Culture, I think, Ben, I'd be curious your take, but I think culturally we're past that point, but not for me individually. I mean, I've made plenty of mistakes. I mean, Ben, you've brought up takes from previous Facebook posts from years past, right? Where I had certain views on things and you and I laughed about them, right? And some of my takes were downright embarrassing in retrospect, right? But I mean, that happens, like it's part of the learning process.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. It should. And I mean, obviously there are exceptions.
Right.
When it came to this country music star, obviously I forget his name because I'm not a huge country music person, but I read that the video was caught by a neighbor's outside camera, and the guy yelled it, and that's kind of been the excuse. Oh, he didn't expect to be heard in the comfort of his own home. Same thing, with Dustin Thomas using the derogatory term towards homosexuals when he was on the golf course. He was kind of overheard when he missed a shot. And the excuse is, well, these guys don't expect to be heard. And it's like, well, those in 2021, those words shouldn't even really be a part of your vocabulary.
I agree.
So,
Right.
in that aspect, I agree. That kind of it's hard to come back from something like that, at least in the short term. When it comes to comments in terms of opinions on politics, again, these people have to know what they're doing because they work for corporations that can make individual decisions on their employment. But some of this, again, if you're going to Disney, who has a questionable past with anti-Semitism in general, with Walt Disney, who was anti-Semitic in his own right in the 1940s. I just think you need to call it down the middle. If you're gonna call it at all. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, good answer. And I think she's getting other deals and stuff like that. I mean, I do believe that there are things that are really bad that people say, but I do believe that, if you apologize and you understand what you said was wrong, I do believe that forgiveness should be a thing, at least in my opinion. All right, now this week, and I brought this up on the other episode too, because I've been obsessed with this case for a very long time. Been rewatching a lot of documentaries on it, but Maura Murray, 21-year-old UMass student, went missing in Haverhill, New Hampshire in 2004. She's still missing to this day. There's no trace. There's nothing. There's a lot of theories on this. What are you guys familiar with this case? And if so, what do you think possibly happened to Maura Murray?
I had to re-familiarize because I remembered it initially, and then when you brought it up more recently, I went back and kind of did some digging on my end. I'm with you, Dan, because these cases have always been fascinating to me. And a little bit of tidbit of information here. Before I moved to North Carolina, my wife and I lived in Lunenburg, Mass, which is like a pencil-thin town in between Fitchburg and Leominster. And there was a young lady in Western Massachusetts at that time, Vanessa Marcoux, and she was actually found brutally murdered, having gone on a run. She was a college student home, just visiting her family, middle of the daytime, literally like 1 o'clock in the afternoon is when it happened. And I looked at this Maura Murray thing like there's like a bigger scenario happening. Like, could it be a serial killer type situation? Could it be with a lot of other missing people involved? Like, could it be like this? She's held captive, like an Amanda Berry situation, right? And you want to think of things like that almost because that's where your head goes. But the randomness that I saw following that Vanessa Marcoux case, the Maura Murray thing feels that way. I agree with her father. I think she is dead. I think that it was somebody relatively local or familiar with the area, and I think her body is somewhere where that whoever did it, that local person is probably, you know what I mean? They knew where to dump a body.
Yeah. No, I mean, Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I have followed the story a little bit, and missing persons cases are always so compelling in terms of trying to figure out what happened, because you feel for these people and their families as well. What would happen if your family member just disappeared without a trace and you have no idea what happened? What kind of feelings do and anxiety, fear does that create? Yeah, I mean, it's got to be something like that. I mean, again, it wasn't alien abduction. At least I'm pretty sure it wasn't. So, did somebody see her crash and just, take it as an opportunity to pick her up and she's being held captive, or, again, serial killer picked her up, just got rid of her body. I mean, again, this happens all the time, and it's so sad. I mean, I'm sure you guys also know about. Or may know about, the Michael McLean case in New Hampshire, the kid who disappeared. I mean, again, he was seen at a bar the night before and, did get into an altercation and then just disappeared. I mean, again, nobody knows what happened. His family is still, trying to find answers. So it happens all the time. It's extremely sad and upsetting. But yeah, I mean, I have to imagine that, if there were no tracks out into the woods or which would be considered a possibility if that were the case. Somebody must have picked her up and, done something to either continue to hold her captive or hide the body, which is horrible.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I've also been upset. I've followed James Redner for a long time, a blogger who wrote a book, and a lot of people question a lot of the things that he's said over the years. The theory of her leaving with everything that was going on in her life is a possibility. I mean, it's not illegal to do that. You know what I mean? But, but also then you go, well, her mom had cancer. She wouldn't come back for that, things like that. But hers is so mysterious because you don't know why she was there. You know what I mean? No one knows why she was there. The Michael McLean thing is interesting to bring that up because now I think we're hitting on maybe 2 years now, or maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely think someone did something to him because he was sending text messages saying, I think he said something along the lines he was being followed.
Right.
Right.
It's just I mean, it's crazy. It's
The
crazy to think.
the saddest thing, in my opinion, on the Mike McLean thing, since we brought it up, and Ben, that's a good shout. The saddest thing is, and I feel for their family. I actually know Mike's family a bit, folks in Mike's family, and I feel for them because I know, and I know that they know that there are people out there that know something that they're not disclosing, and
Right.
that's brutal. I don't know how. I mean, if in that situation, I don't know how I can go through my day-to-day life knowing that.
That's why, I think about when we were back in college and how like altercations and verbal altercations and stuff were kind of like commonplace if you ever went out. And it's so horrible. Like I met the guy a couple of times playing basketball at NBA. He used to play there. Really nice guy from what I saw. And, the fact that potentially an altercation at a bar caused people to take, action on his life, is just, it's awful. You just got to be careful when you talk to anybody at this point. It's ridiculous.
No, yeah, absolutely terrifying. My only other take on the Michael McLean thing is they did a Maury Povich episode where this psychic had a theory that he was thrown in the Merrimack right by my parents' house, right?
Yeah.
Anybody, obviously the boat. I mean, if this is why I have an issue with psychics is I felt like that was exploitation.
Yeah.
Obviously, Maury, that's what he does, but anybody that knows this area knows that boat launch would be a perfect place to throw someone in. They never be seen again, so.
Right.
Yep. The psychic thing too, that came up, Dan, to your point during the Amanda Berry thing. Remember when the psychics were out there saying Amanda Berry was dead? The psychic knew that Amanda Berry was dead. Then little do we know, Amanda Berry and two other women come out of this guy's house.
Right.
Yeah, so. One of the most shocking things, but also one of the best interviews all time. Dead giveaway.
Hands down. I mean, my wife watches that. She'll pull it up on her phone alone, and I'll hear her listening to it every once in a while. And I'm like, oh my god! Like I should have never showed it to her.
Yeah. But yeah, very very tragic stuff, and hopefully someday we know something, and I hope we find something out with Michael as well. All right, getting into politics, we still Trump is no longer in office. But we got the impeachment thing going on again. I think this comes down to whether he can run again or have Secret Service watching him, or there's going to be something criminal there. Couple things. What do you guys think of the impeachment? And what did you think of the storming of the Capitol building? Not something I ever thought I'd see in my life.
Nick, I'll let you go first. You can.
Oh, geez, thanks. Well, what do I think about the impeachment? At this point on this day, I'm pissed about it because I am going to end up owing money in taxes, and I can only imagine that some of my money is going to these proceedings. So I'm annoyed by that. But that's selfish of me. I think this is all an act so that they can ensure he doesn't run again. Right. Like, I think that's what these impeachment proceedings are really about, is just making sure that Trump can't run again. As far as, the Capitol thing, we've never seen anything like that. Right. That was the crazy times we're living in. I'll tell you what, though, some of the memes and things that came out of that were absolute gold.
The shaman.
Oh, my God.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the impeachment hearing is just, again, I agree with Nick. It's just an attempt to either make sure legally he can never run again, or it's also, in any run up to another election, just the mention of a president being impeached twice is a deterrent enough for a lot of people. I do think it's questionable. There's reports coming out that Congress knew that something was likely going to happen, that Trump may have even offered to send the National Guard out early in anticipation of something happening, which they refused. And so, again, I mean, I think the Capitol rioters are I mean, that for that to happen is absolutely ridiculous. And this is somebody who tries to empathize with Trump supporters and firmly believes that 99% of the 75 million people that voted for him aren't, racist, bigot Nazis. I've defended Trump supporters quite a bit. The few that broke into the Capitol building over claims of a stolen election, it's just too much. It's absolutely ridiculous. Even if you firmly believe that the election was stolen, which I get, if you believe that democracy is under fire, you would do something like that. It's still inexcusable with the fact that there really wasn't any evidence offered that was actually a thing.
Great, yeah.
So, again, I think it's ridiculous in terms of the Capitol rioters themselves. I don't think anything Trump said directly incited the violence that happened there. And so I believe that again, this whole impeachment is kind of a sham, just to make sure he doesn't run again or win again. But again, that's my take.
Yeah, no. And one thing that I just and I was kind of talking about this with someone the other day. I understand he's the president, but we're going through like an impeachment thing and stuff. If there should be criminal charges, let's just have criminal charges. Like, why does the president have to be
right
on a, if we did something, now whether you agree that he incited them or not, that's really the charge here. So if you or I were charged with that, there wouldn't be a hearing like this. We would just get arrested and we'd have our day in court. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
right.
that's where I'm kind of like, this is kind of, I don't know, kind of silly.
Politics, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. What do you guys think of the next 4 years under Joe Biden and his presidency?
I can go first this time.
Yeah. Please. By all means, Ben. By all means.
Yeah, I mean, again, just like with Trump, I have to practice what I preach. I wish Joe Biden the best, just like I told people that they should wish Trump the best. He is the president of the United States. From what I've seen so far, he's kind of gone a little bit against what he ran on, which was, bringing the country back together and unity. I mean, to have that many executive orders in his first week, reversing everything without any congressional process, it kind of completely goes against that, particularly after he says something like, only dictators use executive orders, or executive orders are dictatorial or something like that. I just think it's, again, it's, even though it's reversed a lot of Trump's policies and that was the purpose, again, his stimulus bill coming up where they're talking about reconciliation and just taking the Republican vote completely out of it. I mean, again, all I would say is that if you're going to run on unity, try and do a little bit more to bring the parties back together. As stupid as a two-party system is at this point. But again, I wish him the best. I do hope that over the next 4 years, significant changes come, and that there's kind of the divisiveness that permeates American culture right now changes as well. I don't necessarily think it's going to happen, but I am optimistic and in hoping that it happens.
Yeah, it's tough. Biden's tough for me because I want to really, really like him. I really do. His personal story, his personal, the things that he's gone through in his life. I do really want to like him. And then he chose Kamala, and I'm like, oh my God, dude. Could you have found a better? Because I look at it this way: the next 4 years is really just an audition of, is Kamala going to be the next president? right?
Yeah.
Because Biden's not a reasonable candidate 4 years from now. He's going to be, 80-something years old at that point. He's not running for re-election. So I worry about that because I view her as a political disaster waiting to happen. But Biden himself, I think, I think he's capable, obviously. He's very experienced with politics in this country. I'm optimistic as long as the stock market's doing well.
And one thing I'll say is, I don't need to check Twitter as much anymore, which I've appreciated that aspect.
I don't like that aspect of it, honestly. I like asking Alexa in the morning so she can read all Trump's tweets to me.
Yeah. What a wild time. And just vaccine rollout, every state is a little bit like I want Massachusetts to catch up because I want to go to a Patriots game next year. I want to be in Fenway Park this summer. How are you guys feeling about the vaccine rollout so far?
Ben, I'll jump into this one first. I got a hot take. So Dan and Ben, you guys are both Facebook friends. I don't know. Most of your listeners probably don't realize this. I have an ongoing social media feud with FedEx.
Okay.
I hate them as a courier. They have absolutely ruined and almost ruined certain scenarios in my life, and consistently deliver things or don't deliver things on time or don't deliver them at all. So I troll them regularly about how the rollout's been such a disaster because we chose FedEx. So I'll be on their social media pages claiming those sort of things. So I don't know if you ever see those comments, but I think it varies state to state, right? Like, how do I think the rollout goes? Well, I think it depends on where you live. In North Carolina, my wife is already on. I mean, she's a healthcare worker, but she's on her first round of vaccine. I think a lot of people that I speak to that are like pre-existing conditions or like that high risk category have already gone through 2 sort of vaccines and that kind of thing. So I really think that it depends on where you live. I think Fauci's saying something like April, it's going to be readily available for people in April. I think that was the equivalent of Trump saying we were going to open back up for Easter last year. I mean, I don't know what Fauci's thinking, but so that's a roundabout way of saying I hate FedEx and I'm not sure about how the rollout is as a whole in North Carolina. I think it's going decent, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to Biden, by this summer we'll have enough vaccine dosages to vaccinate 3 Americans. He repeated it, 3 Americans.
Wow.
So,
all right, big jump there. Can I volunteer?
Yeah. One thing I love about Biden is his ability to just kind of like completely mess up numbers and then correct himself. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the vaccine rollout, the vaccine there's multiple things to consider here, right? Because I mean, obviously, there's like the actual rollout and the logistics of it, which vary from state to state, and whether you see it as a successful rollout or not. And then there's also kind of the mythos behind the vaccine where it's like, doesn't this seem a little bit rushed to begin with? I mean, I'm a person who did get that notification that I was considered part of like the early, like the 1B group that is in somewhat higher danger of severe symptoms because of apparently my size. I'm healthy otherwise, and so I haven't taken advantage of that just because again it's like I do kind of want to see how it goes with the initial group of people that take it before I myself take it, particularly because I'm perfectly fine just sitting in my house for the next 2 months, at least until the golf season starts. Again, I think it's going well logistically, at least in the state of New Hampshire. Whether a lot of people think like me and just kind of want to see what happens with a vaccine that was produced extremely, extremely quickly. That's yet to be seen how many people actually get the vaccine when they're supposed to, or when it's readily available to the general public.
Yeah. I mean, I totally get that. I mean, I never had a. Are we getting a little echo? Or is that me? No. Okay. Um, yeah, I've never had a flu shot, which I can admittedly say.
Me
And
neither.
I've said this on the show many times. So uh, I'll get it. I'll probably be one of the last people to do it. I'm not totally like worried about it. I'd rather my parents get it. That's fine. Whatever. But yeah, let's just get this done. Let's get through 2021 and hopefully things are better soon. But New York is opening up sports stadiums and things like that if you have a negative test. So let's get into some sports here because the fan questions were really, some people either they love Nick for his take on Brady or they hate him. But the first one's from Benny Bovair, former guest of the show. I'm a Brady hater too. Also, Nick Paquin, I want to hear how you think Breeze is better. He's a New Orleans Saints fan, by the way.
Yeah. Benny. It's a great question. I don't like to class him off. First of all, Benny, I don't like to classify myself as a Brady hater. I like to classify myself as the Brady hater. So it's a little bit different. And what I would say to that is the argument for Drew Brees, in my opinion, is relatively easy. I mean, Drew Brees had, and you could argue this with me for sure, Drew Brees had the best 10-year career at quarterback as far as numbers go than anybody in history. That includes Ben, and that pains me to say because Peyton Manning won 5 MVPs. But if you look at just overall statistics, I mean, Drew Brees had 5 seasons where he threw for over 5,000 yards, right? Like you could make the argument that he would have eclipsed even those numbers for 12 years had he not been hurt. I think the last 2 years he played like 12 games and 11 games. Brees' numbers are insane. The other thing about Drew Brees is people talk about like, oh, the talent around him, this, that, and the other. But a guy like Marcus Colston, what was he without Drew Brees? Right? We're going to find out what Alvin Kamara is without Drew Brees.
Michael Thomas.
Thomas, we're going to find out what he is without Drew Brees. I think Drew Brees is probably the most underappreciated quarterback in history, and I would personally take him over Tom Brady every time.
And he's a guy that the Chargers gave up on. Like a lot of people forget that.
They did.
So.
They did, and he turned New Orleans around. I mean, he turned that franchise around. I mean, you talk about like what Peyton did for the Colts. How about the Saints? I mean, this was an organization that was trading their entire draft for a guy like Ricky Williams at one point, right? Come on. I mean, Drew Brees turned that organization around. He won a Super Bowl with him. Give me Drew Brees. I hope he comes back a year.
Yeah, for sure.
And another question: people really eating up the Brady hater stuff from Nick. Leo Connors, the host of The Ring and Other Sports, multiple-time guest on this show. Give it up, Nick. Brady is the best of all time. He's definitely not the best right now. Who is, in your opinion? And Nick, you answer this too, and Ben, I want to know who you guys think is the best quarterback in the league right now.
The obvious answer. I guess the question was addressed to me. So the obvious answer, I think I'd be foolish, right, if I didn't say Pat Mahomes. I think Patrick Mahomes, just talent-wise, overall production, very early into his career, is probably the best quarterback that I've ever seen. That being said, I started to think about it. I started to dig into numbers because I'm a huge numbers nerd guy, especially with football. Here's a number for your friend Leo. Justin Herbert, the rookie this year for the Chargers, had a more efficient and better statistical season than Tom Brady has had for 12 of his 20-year career. 12 seasons of his 20-year career. Justin Herbert, rookie year, had better numbers than 12 seasons that Tom Brady's played in. I think that's significant. And I look at a guy like Herbert, who he plays with a chip on his shoulder. He was pissed about where he got drafted. He's a scary proposition, man. He can move well. He's a good runner. So Pat Mahomes is the easy answer, but Justin Herbert. And then there's also this guy coming out of college, Trevor Lawrence, who would, scouts recently said at his pro day that he is going to be that he'd be the number one quarterback or number one pick in any draft in history. That's high praise.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of who I think is the best right now, I would agree it's Pat Mahomes. And again, will he catch Brady? That's, in terms of the rings, that's the question for a lot of people. I'm just, just talking about the eye test. I mean, again, an AFC championship appearance, 2 Super Bowl appearances, 1 win in really his first 3 years starting. And the throws that this guy makes, I mean, that throw where he was falling down and it bounced off the guy, I think it was Byron Pringle or whoever it was, bounced off his face mask. That throw might have been a better throw, even uncaught, than any throw Tom Brady has made in his entire career. Sorry, but in terms of the athleticism and the skill to make that throw, that's just how I feel. I'm not going to take anything away from Tom Brady. He had a great season for a 43-year-old, but I would agree with Nick. I mean, Justin Herbert, there are a number of quarterbacks in the league this year that were just better and didn't have the luxury of the roster that Tom Brady had. And aside from that, again, I mean, I think it comes down for me, I'm a big hypocrisy guy. I love to call it hypocrisy. If you're one of those guys who wanted to credit the Patriots' success solely on Tom Brady for his performance this year, and we're also one of those guys who, when Brady had a stretch of an awful 4 games this season, tried to blame it on Bruce Arians' system, it's kind of hypocritical because Tom Brady should have been able to weather that storm, which he did in the long run. But in terms of, his play, his ability, if he was the amazing quarterback that he is at 43, that everybody's saying that he is, he would have been able to play a lot better despite the system issues that apparently Bruce Arians brings to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I would say, again, if you look at his touchdowns, if you look at his yardage, great for a 43-year-old. If you look at QBR and some of the more specific, some of the more specific metrics, he had kind of an average season. But at the end of the day, he won his 7th Super Bowl. It's unprecedented. Good for him and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Also, good for Aaron Rodgers. Good for Aaron Rodgers winning his 3rd MVP. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Aaron Rodgers winning his 3rd MVP, which is tied for the amount of MVPs Brady's won, and Brett Favre.
And one thing I will point out after watching this season with the Patriots, and I was really pulling for Cam Newton. I like Cam Newton. I just like him.
Yeah.
The quarterback position tells you how important it is because, the Bucs made some changes this year, but Jameis Winston wasn't going to take that team to the Super Bowl if he was still the quarterback. It just would not have happened. It's just so important to have that guy, whether it's an Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, whoever's coming up, Trevor Lawrence, like you said, this guy, man, I wish we tanked and had the number 1 pick. But we talked about Brady a little bit. Any takes on the game? Obviously, Tom wins his 7th. We're going to move into sports here, which was, again, unprecedented, unbelievable. I don't blame that loss on Patrick Mahomes. They didn't really protect him. But any thoughts on the game?
Yeah, not only didn't protect him, but he was pressured 52% of his snaps. That's a record. Not like a Super Bowl record. It's just a record for a game, period, since they've done the recording, which is unprecedented by itself. I will say Tampa Bay's defense, and Ben, you drew this comparison, so I'll let you expand on it. But Tampa Bay's defense reminded me of those New York Giants Super Bowl defenses against the Patriots, right? Like they got hot at the right time. I mean, 10 turnovers in 4 playoff games they forced. That is incredible. That defense was incredible. Brady gave Green Bay every chance to win that game with his 3 interceptions in the second half. And the defense stepped up and pretty much shut down the MVP. I mean, some of that was Devontae Adams dropping balls in the end zone, which is insane. But the defense, Tampa's defense was incredible all postseason, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and to go to a point that you've made, Nick, another top 10 defense for Tom Brady in the playoffs. I mean, they were great all year, despite some people wanting to not give them enough credit in their losses. I think they played the defense overall played amazingly in the Super Bowl. From a pass rushing standpoint, I mean, it's historic. They might have had the best pass rushing performance in NFL history when you compare them. I think they beat the amount of pressures that Tom Brady received in that game against the Giants. I think they beat that number of pressures on on Pat Mahomes by like 6, which is crazy. I mean, if you look at, you know, if the gap between first and second is 6 pressures, that's just insane. Especially when we're so familiar with that game and how disruptive that pass rush was against Tom Brady when he played the Giants. I mean, this was that much worse. So, I mean, again, it's great. It's a great story, and I think that's one of the things that drove this the most, is that it is a great story in a pandemic year. You know, the next guy challenges Brady, and Brady says, "Nah, it's a little bit early for that." That's the narrative, and so in a year where we needed that narrative, probably, you know, again, congratulations to the Buccaneers fans. You know, it's a great win.
All right, now I want to get into something that's been a little bit on my mind, because social media is such a, as fun as it can be such a toxic place too.
Yeah.
I was in the sports trash talk page, and they were like, it got to the point I had to leave because they were like stealing stuff off my actual Facebook, and I'm like, I don't know who's doing this and whatever. I mean, my pictures are out there. They're using them totally out of context and all that. But I guess my thing is, yes, you can be a diehard fan of a team. Are you allowed to wear a jersey of another team of a player that you really like? And because I love Brett Favre, I have multiple Brett Favre jerseys. Brett Favre is one of my favorite players. I don't, you know, ever since his game, you know, when his dad passed, Brett Favre is one of my favorite players ever. Gets me to this. Patriot fans rooting for Tom Brady, and people having such an issue with Patriot fans either having a Tom Brady Tampa Bucs jersey or anything like that. What's your take? Are you not allowed to root for specific players in sports?
Well, I think that's such a good question, Dan. Honestly, it's a personal preference, right? Like for me, and it depends on the sport and the team also, right? Like I need to emphasize that, because like for Liverpool, I mean, I still play soccer in adult leagues and that sort of thing. And there's been teams that I've just flat out refused to wear the uniform because they wanted to wear the Manchester United uniform. I'm not wearing that.
Yeah, like Yankees for me.
Yeah. I'm not doing that. Like the only way you'd get me into an Everton kit is if you shot me dead and dressed me in it. That's the only way. And I have, you know, people that would make sure that didn't happen if I were dead. So the thing is, like, it depends on the sport. A player leaves my team being Liverpool. If a player leaves, dead to me. I don't care. I don't care what they do. You know what I mean? If they retire, that's one thing. But if they leave and go to a different club, I mean, they're of no interest of mine anymore. That being said, in like the NBA, I tend to follow players a lot more than I follow like a specific team. I think the game lends itself to be. My thing with the Patriots, New England's a tough. Philly fans get a lot of flack. New England sports fans are tough, Dan. You know that. You guys are brutal as far as fan base, and I think that we give you guys an inch and you take 3 feet. You know,
Yeah.
So that's the way I look at it. But you know, root for whoever you want it. I don't care. You know?
Yeah, I would agree with what Nick just said. You know, give an inch, take 3 feet. I had this conversation with somebody who literally asked me, because, you know, I put up a status saying, like, you know, congrats, this is a huge win for the Bucs organization and Bucs fans. And somebody said, you know, well, what if we're just a Tom Brady fan? What if we're just rooting for Tom Brady? And that's fine, as long as you're not one of those Patriots fans who somehow have turned this into like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are now the Patriot South.
Yeah.
And like a win, the Buccaneers winning is somehow a victory for them. It's not. Like there are franchise lines here. Like you can't like count Tom Brady's victory for the Buccaneers as another championship for the New England Patriots. And a lot of people are kind of acting that way. You know, I half expected some of the diehard homers that I know be posting "you hate us because you ain't us" on Facebook after this win. Like that's the way it felt for some of these people, where it was like Tom Brady's the GOAT, like, oh, another ring for us. I mean him, like
Yeah.
that's the way it felt to me. So again, root for who you want to root for. If you're a Tom Brady fan, if you appreciate everything he's done with the franchise, which is how it feels with you, Dan. Like I appreciate that. I appreciate that type of loyalty, as long as you're still a diehard Patriots fan and understand that this was a win for the Bucs and the Bucs fans. But again, if you're one of those fans who's trying to pretend like somehow the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are New England South now, I mean, you just need to get over it. Like he's not your quarterback anymore.
Yeah, I get a lot of flack because I do own a lot of sports jerseys. That's just who I am. I've always been that way. I felt different again. Mookie Betts wins the World Series. I was happy for Mookie, but I don't own a Mookie Betts Dodgers shirt. Tom was here for 20 years. So for him I bought that jersey before I even knew what that team was going to. I just was like, Tom Brady, I'm buying another Tom Brady jersey. Right. It's going to be cool. There's just certain players that you really like. Now, I agree with you. Bucs won. I'm not buying Bucs championship gear. I got my Tom Brady Bucs jersey. That's it. And I think my girlfriend ordered me this Tom Brady GOAT shirt, and it might be, I think it's red, Bucs colors or whatever.
How dare you?
Yeah, I hate that.
Because I'm rooting for Tom. Now, I don't care about the Bucs. I care about Tom.
Yeah.
But I was in this page, and they're like treating me like I totally jumped ship. I'm like, dude, no one was more of a Cam Newton supporter than me this year, and I don't care what anybody says there. I had my Cam Newton Patriots jersey all year. Don't even go there with me. That's why I left that stupid page. Bunch of jackasses. That's for another day.
You did the right thing, Dan. You did the right thing.
J.J. Watt, what's going on with the Houston Texans? It feels like everybody's just abandoning ship here.
My take on J.J. Watt is, and this is early prediction. I had this conversation on a separate podcast the other day. He's going to end up in Tampa because that's what happens now. They're basically like Tom Brady's turned into LeBron. So he'll be in Tampa. He'll be recruited by Tom. He'll help beef up that defense. Everyone's saying Pittsburgh because his brothers are there, but the inclination is he wants to win a ring, and he certainly is going to do that in Pittsburgh. So he's gonna need to go to a place like Tampa, not the Chargers. Sorry, excuse me, Tampa, the Rams, or maybe even the Packers might make sense for him. But I think, that's what we're looking at. I can see J.J. Watt going to Tampa, and he's not going to be that guy anymore. He's not J.J. Watt that we know, right? Like, he's not that guy anymore.
Yeah, he's not a defensive player of the year, J.J. Watt anymore.
No.
That being said, he can still help a defense. He's still going to be an impact player. He's just too talented not to be. Instead of commenting on where I think he's going to go, because again, that's just kind of all speculation at this point. I'll comment on the Houston Texans. Man,
it's not good right now.
What a disaster, right? I mean, and it all starts with that trade last year. Trading away Hopkins for David Johnson. I mean now Deshaun Watson comes out or wants out, who's kind of a generational quarterback. He's a franchise quarterback, arguably top 5 in the NFL. JJ Watt's leaving. I mean, as long as they get what they're supposed to for Watson, which is kind of unlikely, but as long as they do, maybe they can salvage it and really make a decent attempt at a rebuild. But I mean, they're just again, they're just in trouble. I mean, even down to I think Will Fuller is a free agent this year too. And he just got suspended for the last few games of the season for apparently for one of those it was a substance in another substance that I wasn't supposed to take. It's my trainer's fault type of thing.
Yeah, and Houston is interesting to me too, Dan, because one thing I always try to do in these situations is put myself in the fan base's shoes. The only thing in my mind that would be acceptable for the disaster that organization is if you let Jacksonville absolutely fleece you for that first overall pick, so that you can go in and grab Trevor Lawrence. That's the only thing that makes all of this monstrosity excusable, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's not pretty right now. I mean, it's almost like them and Philly right now just feel like a total mess. So we'll kind of see. But all right, let's get into some favorite sports moments.
Real quick, Dan, I just want to say, as a Colts fan, I'm actually okay with having Wentz come over.
I would take him as a New England fan.
Yeah.
We got apparently Stidham. Bill doesn't believe in him, right? Cam, he's not Cam Newton anymore that he was. He's just not.
Yeah.
You got to reach your receivers. That's the only way you can win games. You got to get the ball to them.
I don't know. I rate Mr. Wentz from Memorial High School higher than Carson Wentz at the quarterback position. That's my take there.
I get that reference, but we'll move on. We'll move on.
All right,
He's an English teacher. Yeah.
I want to get in some sports moments, and I want to talk about briefly on something because I know Nick wanted to talk about it. Because I asked this question to someone the other day, and they actually answered it different than I expected. Because when I usually ask this to guests, what are your favorite sports moments? And they actually gave me sports moments they were involved in, like softball moments, which was like, oh, I never even thought about that. So I think both your favorite sports moments to win the Turkey Bowl back to back, which is a Thanksgiving tradition. We actually pushed it back a week this year because with COVID, I didn't want people coming there, giving it to relatives. I said, if you're going to come to this, you might get COVID. Don't give it to your grandparents. We're going to do this after, but you guys enjoyed your time with that. Would love to have you guys back, but is that one of your favorite, as rec sports as we're getting older moments?
I'll say I have a couple favorite memories from the Turkey Bowl. Both Turkey Bowl wins. Ben, one I won't share, but the one that I will share is the second year that we won it. We did the coin toss, and they did the coin toss against the team we were playing in the finals, and the guy was like, "Oh, I remember the guy saying like, we get to call the coin toss because we haven't lost all day," and I just remember smirking and saying, "Pal, we haven't lost in 2 years." So that was my personal favorite moment. So we won the coin toss and the game.
Yeah, I think those 2 years were kind of unprecedented, right? I mean, like I think we had a tie, like we had one tie in like the first year, or we only won by like 1 point in an overtime, or I don't know, something like that. But yeah, that second year that second year was even better. We just swept and we made it look easy.
And we had so much talent. We just had so much talent that we literally turned Sean Gill into an all-pro quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, quite like Tom Brady.
Yeah, yeah, it is. So we moved to a draft this year, and I kind of just said, you guys, as the person that runs, I said, you guys drafted. I just was like, they were at a bar. I was on Zoom just listening.
Yeah.
And then I find out there's all these, trades going on after the fact. So I'm like, I was like, we drafted this, so you guys trade, and I said, whatever, you guys, if you're all cool with it, I don't care or whatnot. But Nick, what are some, because, you're a big soccer fan. So what are your favorite sports moments that you've witnessed from pro sports?
Oh, from pro sports, huh?
Or college. You could throw whatever you want.
Yeah. So, again, I'm a huge soccer fan. Liverpool. I always say I'm a Liverpool supporter, not really a soccer supporter. But yeah, they just won the first league title in the last 30 years. They haven't won one for 30 years. They won their first in England for that period of time. I was basically 3 years old last time that they won it. Obviously, it had to be during COVID, to which my wife and I both had tickets to the hospitality suite to see the last game and go to the parade. Flight tickets, the whole thing got canceled. Pains me to this day that I wasn't able to be there to celebrate and to see the final game of the season. Yeah, it would have been outstanding. I would say that first and foremost. And then I think about like early childhood, and I could give you a million Liverpool memories, but I will say this one because it's a New England-based show. The David Tyree catch, to me, is something that like I could watch every single day on a loop. I could watch the David Tyree catch every single day.
Yeah, we used that. We had that on the show last week. We did a Super Bowl episode, and I think I put that one up in blank versus blank against the Butler catch. And truth be told, 3 out of the 4 people took Butler still. I still think what David Tyree did though was just like, how? With Rodney Harrison on you.
Yeah.
Like Hall of Famer. You know,
Yeah.
like I hated it as a Patriots fan, respect it as a sports fan. Absolutely insane.
Yeah.
You know. All right, well, let's get into pop culture. Justin Timberlake kind of released like an odd apology yesterday. I'm not sure what I'm missing. It was an apology to Britney Spears, which was his ex-girlfriend. Apology to Janet Jackson, which I guess for the Super Bowl, where I think Justin didn't feel like he was as accountable as she was at that point. I'm not sure where this apology was coming from. It has to do with being in a male-dominated world, I guess. But at the same time, like, I don't think the Super Bowl ruined Janet Jackson's like a legend. Like that didn't ruin her career in my eyes. I don't know.
No, that made her more relevant to me. I think I don't know. But Ben, what are your thoughts? I'm curious on your thoughts.
No, it's just, I mean, again, it's just more of this like it's just more people trying to like one up each other's wokeness. You know, it's Justin Timberlake, you know, for one. So the reason that he apologized to Britney Spears is because apparently there's this new. I haven't watched it because I'm just not interested. But there's this new Britney Spears documentary about basically how when she was going through all her mental health issues and stuff like that, basically it just like the media just absolutely destroyed her for no reason and just made her life that much worse. And apparently, like people who watched it, there was something in there that made them feel like they should all pile on Justin Timberlake and say that say that he owed her an apology, which I guess, it was for that. And then, of course, when you do that, you then need to make sure you cover all your bases. So you apologize for what was a very obvious mistake, wardrobe malfunction, which, again, it's awful, but it actually probably made Janet Jackson more popular than she was before that Super Bowl. As ridiculous as that is. I mean, it just feels like more like, I'm a man living in a male dominated world, the patriarchy that is the United States. I really need to apologize for all my misdeeds while I have the opportunity.
Justin Timberlake can Cry Me a River.
And that song was about Britney Spears because I believe she cheated on him. So I just thought it was weird. I only brought it up because I was like, what is he talking about? Because, a lot of people said they're like, oh, Janet Jackson really took a hit after that. I go, Janet Jackson is one of my, whatever Michael, I don't talk about Michael Jackson too much on the show. I don't bring him up because I love the music. Michael, we only know so much in what we've heard in other things, but the Jacksons, Janet or Michael, two of the best of all time. I never thought anything less of Janet Jackson after that Super Bowl moment. She's a GOAT in my opinion. And Justin, shut up. I don't understand what you're doing right now. So.
No, I agree with you on the Michael Jackson stuff too. I mean, it's like it's different when it's like somebody like R. Kelly, where like the music is like you listen back to his songs and you're like, he was thinking about a lot of the stuff he was doing back then. Yeah. Like it's hard to like defend his music, but yeah, there's nothing wrong with Michael Jackson's music.
No.
Again, like too many people can't separate what has happened in a person's personal life and their art. And if you look back through history, there were a lot of in a lot of situations, it takes a pretty flawed human being to be a successful artist. Yeah. As messed up as that is, it's true if you look throughout history. So I completely agree with that.
And how bad was Michael Jackson's personal life anyway? Macaulay Culkin turned out fine, right?
Yeah. I think a lot. Well, they had that documentary that came out, I think, about 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
the thing is too, like when it comes to especially child victims, you don't want to doubt what they're saying is true at
Right.
all. But like at the same time, one of those guys is testifying for Michael at 21.
Yeah.
Like at
Right.
that point, I mean, at 21, I
His
know if
estate is worth billions of dollars.
yeah, like there's just too much to it. And
Right.
but at the same time, if because I remember like when Chris Brown had his stuff, and I was like, yeah, he punched Rihanna, which was just like, what? Like, but I was like, I like the music, I don't like the person.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know where that falls with entertainment, but
Yeah.
I guess that could be a whole nother show. What are some of the worst movies that you guys have ever seen? I just wanted to bring this up because we always talk about like what movies everybody loves, but what are just movies that just sucked that you were like, man, I can't believe I just watched this?
Oh God. Recent. I mean, we talking like all time. Give me some.
Whatever. I'm just curious.
The worst movie. Okay, so there is the worst movie I think that I've ever seen was it was called Gummo. I don't know if either of you are familiar with it. I don't recommend it at all. It was the plot was virtually non-existent. It was one of those movies that was so disturbing it literally made me feel physically ill watching it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. It's the worst movie I've seen, hands down. As I have a hot take on this though, I think I personally think the Irishman was a terrible movie. I do. I didn't like it at all. And I like all things Irish, and I did not like that. So, yeah, I had a tough time. Felt like it was drawn out, dragged out. I also think Reservoir Dogs sucks. That's probably a hot take.
Dropping bombs like just in passing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm giving you more hot takes, like movies that people like that I think are terrible. I mean, those come to mind,
I'll go recent because I actually didn't see that question, and so I think I could put a little bit more thought into it and come up with something like all time. But a couple of movies that I've seen recent, like the new, and it was too bad because I really liked the first one. The new Wonder Woman movie was absolutely
I didn't see
awful.
84, the one from like the 84 one.
That was it was just bad. It was just all around bad. The another movie that a lot of people hype, but that like and I ended up watching it because people did, that I just like really didn't think was good at all was Midsommar.
Oh my God, let's go. I want to debate this. Yes, go ahead.
Wow.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan. Like I watched it and it was like I have trouble with movies where like I get the concept and I get the art behind it.
This was a recent purchase.
Oh,
but no, go ahead.
Great, great.
No, but I want to hear this because this has because I watch a lot of YouTubers and their opinions, and this is like all over the place. So I do want to hear why you didn't like it, Ben.
I just thought so. Here's the thing. Personally, I hate movies that are like preventable. Okay, like when scenarios in the movie where it's like I would have just done that and the movie would have been over, or I would have just done that and been fine. Like hack and slash movies where it's just like sit in a room and hold a baseball bat and wait for what I mean, like stuff like that where it's like all of this would have been completely preventable if the person was just in a different mindset or handled things differently. That's those bother me in general. And then again, the movie was just like the movie was just weird.
Better than Hereditary.
I think it's way better than Hereditary.
I would agree with that. Although the one scene in Hereditary that there were a couple of scenes in Hereditary that were much harder to watch and were more shocking than what happened in Midsommar. But I would agree all around Midsommar was better than Hereditary. I just didn't like the movie. Like I didn't like the concept. I didn't like the ending. I just all of it was just like okay. That was my response. Okay. Like
See,
that's how
She
I
was
felt at
May
the end of the
Queen,
movie.
Ben. She was May Queen.
I walked away from it and couldn't stop thinking about it. And like when a movie does that for me, that I'm thinking about it days later, like, wait a second, I gotta look at the take on this. I mean, because there was a lot of themes. I think this Asner guy could end up being a great director.
Mhm.
But just the fact that it is slow, it's a slow build. You know that's gonna be it is a horror movie.
Yep.
It's a horror movie. And to think I just think I guess what got me with that is like there's certain movies that made me go, what would I do in that situation? Like you're like I'm obsessed with Halloween, right? And you remember Halloween too when oh my god, I can't think of the actress name. She's uh,
Jamie Lee
anyways,
Curtis.
We know what
Jamie
you're
Lee
talking
Curtis.
about.
I can't even think of that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Halloween 2 where she's like crawling and she can't the people are right there. They're right there and she
Yeah.
can't get the words out. It makes me go, "What how would I feel in that situation?" This was like the same thing. Like you just put yourself in a horrible place where you're not getting out of there. There's no way out. Like I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, I mean that when I don't want to spoil it for a bunch of people, but when
Yeah.
they're like watching the initial ceremony and those two old people just hurl themselves off that mountaintop, I'm like,
Yeah.
holy shit! Like, what just happened?
Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. Like at some point, aren't you like, all right, like these people are weird. Like they're not gonna let us go after watching something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
but they were giving them like hallucinogens the whole time. Like
Yeah.
they were getting them lit. You know that you have to consider that too, Ben.
but
Like it's not they.
don't you just sneak out? Like, don't you just like take your chances? Like,
First of all,
Where do you
you'd
go?
never catch me there. Yeah, you'd never catch me going to some like off the beaten path cult. I don't care what the scenario is.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
never see it.
And the thing is though, and I don't want to spoil too much, but there was the two guys there with their thesis, like they were looking for an opportunity here,
Yeah,
which makes them not as sympathetic characters because you're like, well, you were there to try to take advantage of these people, and turns out they're taking advantage of you.
Yeah.
And it's just very, I don't know. I wouldn't, again, never put myself in, hey, I grew up on a commune. You want to come? No.
no,
Hey, you want to come
That's
do
what I'm saying
shrooms
though.
with this,
You take like, I mean, I guess that's the only scenario. Like you take two graduate students. How the hell are they so dumb?
yeah.
Well,
You know what I mean? Like,
they're American graduate students. I think that's
true. All right, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, I at least, no matter how, because there's so many reviews, mixed reviews. I've brought this has now come up on the show like 3 different times. Check it out.
Yep.
Make your own conclusion.
For sure,
to it.
watch it. It is one of those movies where like you should come up with your own opinion, but it isn't. I'm not saying it's so bad you shouldn't watch it. I'm just saying like it's one of those movies that's either like cult bad or cult amazing, and I went with cult bad.
Awesome. All right. Well, all right. I want to ask you guys this because when I went on your show, we started getting into some wrestling a little bit here.
Oh yeah.
Who do you guys got in your top 5 wrestlers of all time?
Are you talking in order or just any order?
You can put them in order if you want. You can ramble off whatever your favorites were. Whatever.
All right, well, I'm going to put mine in order because the only one that matters to me is number 1, and that's Stone Cold Steve Austin. You can fill in the other 4 however you want. Stone Cold Steve Austin to me is like not just one of the greatest wrestlers, but like just like a person who I feel like I know. Like I mean, I feel like I grew up, and my idols were Mike Tyson, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Tupac Shakur, and like that's all I needed. I think behind that, I'll put The Rock and Kurt Angle, Triple H, Undertaker, right? And you can choose the order for the rest of those guys, but we have different takes on the Attitude Era, you and I, Dan. But I mean, that era in particular, where those guys were all at the peak, I mean, give me that all day.
Yeah, I would go. So Rock and Austin, the Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin are up there for me, just because I feel like it's unprecedented to have two. It's unprecedented to have 2 superstars like that just are so captivating in any sport at the same time. I loosely call it a sport. I mean, obviously these guys are athletes, but we
Sports entertainment.
right, sports entertainment, exactly. So The Rock and Austin are really up there for me. Undertaker, just because of the career that he's had, how long he's been around, his performances at WrestleMania. I would put, so believe it or not, I would put John Cena up there, just because John Cena listen, if
He
you
carried
consider,
it, yeah.
So John Cena carried wrestling from one of the most popular eras of the WWE into what it is now, and it wasn't like it wasn't easy with kind of that transition. So
What he carry? It's like when you move and you carry your couch to the dumpster.
But well, here's what happened is, everybody's on the market after WCW closes. They run out their Time Warner contracts, and then WWE's signing everybody. Now you got everybody, even though it was past the invasion. But
Right.
you have to make new stars. You
Yep.
can't be. What are you going to run the NWO for the next 10? No, you can't do that.
Right.
So you're right. You're 100% right. John Cena, Batista, Randy Orton, they kind of were the next, and Brock Lesnar. I can't leave out, even though his first run was so short. Those guys like picked up the pieces of the company.
And I would put Hogan. I would put Hogan to round out my top 5, just because of like his ability, like how huge he's been for so long, what he did for wrestling early, and then for him to be able to kind of transform himself throughout the years to fit what wrestling needed. I thought, I think Hogan is also up there for me.
By what wrestling needed, you mean the sex tape, or?
What I will
That was
say,
more what I needed.
we did do an episode where we put who is the greatest wrestler of all time, and it was decided. Now, and we said this before, Terry Bollea is not a good dude. He's a jerk, and he's done some horrible things. But Hulk Hogan, the character, Hulk Hogan, is the greatest wrestler of all time. And as much as I love Ric Flair, because it usually comes down to Flair and Hogan, Hogan drew. He was the 80s. He was the first guy to go to the mainstream and be in movies. Like, I'm telling you this, as soon as I heard that music as a kid, I was when The Undertaker beat him at Survivor Series, I cried. I ran away and I hid. I'd never, I was 7, but there was nobody else at that time that made me feel that emotional about them losing. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
Let's get into blank versus blank. Got a few here. First one, because he's come up. We kind of, again, Soapy pre-op is probably, this is well documented. He's making a lot of threats. He's going to show up at the studio and all this other stuff. But he made some comments about Owen Hart that I didn't appreciate. And Soapy, I know I call you out on every episode, but you deserve it. You said some messed up things. But Owen Hart or Bret Hart?
I'm going to give you a political answer. I say like Bret Hart's career, but Owen Hart's talent, if that makes sense.
Okay. Owen could actually come off the top rope. Bret couldn't.
Right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so again, I mean, I would kind of say the same thing. I think Bret Hart's career and especially, kind of the controversy surrounding what happened to him. I would go with Bret Hart's career. Owen Hart's career obviously ended way too soon. But in terms of just raw talent, Owen Hart definitely was a more talented wrestler.
Okay, good answer. I mean, Bret, they both told different stories in the ring. I mean, I think Owen was more athletic of the two.
Yeah, for sure.
Better hitter. Now I know one has the hits record, but one we saw for years, and I mean, this guy like never struck out. Pete Rose or Tony Gwynn?
Oh God, I thought you were going to say Ichiro.
I got Gwynn ahead of Ichiro, as much as I love Ichiro.
So I've seen a lot of Tony Gwynn. Throughout his career, a ton. I'm going Pete Rose. Pete Rose was a winner. He was a gamer. I'm going Pete Rose.
Yeah, I'll go with Pete Rose too. There are still guys to this day who talk, and I mean, it might be the same for Gwynn, but there's still guys who talk to Pete Rose about his about his hitting technique and how they can improve theirs. It's a travesty he's not in the Hall of Fame right now. Obviously, the guy has made mistakes in his career, big mistakes. But at this point, it's like you said earlier in the show, forgiveness. It's time to forgive somebody and recognize their talent and what they did in the game, and what he did in the game is irrefutable. He's the greatest, arguably the greatest hitter of all time.
Yeah, and we could probably spend, and I'll probably touch more on this as we get closer to baseball season because there's so many issues with the Baseball Hall of Fame right now. It's frustrating because I understand there were steroids being used, but Selig knew about that. But you are erasing our childhood in many ways. That there's just players that's like, I want to go to that induction ceremony. I want to be there. I want to take a picture with that plaque, and you're not allowing us to do that, and it sucks.
Right.
All right, because we just brought it up. Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan?
Oh, I'm gonna go Hogan. I mean, I've always looked at it very similar. I looked at Hogan as like Hogan pioneered wrestling, right? Like Hogan was the pioneer of wrestling. I've always looked at like Stone Cold as revolutionizing wrestling.
Yeah,
they've both had their moments. I mean, I'll go Hogan. I'll go Hogan as well. I give a lot of respect to Ric Flair, especially like how long he stayed in the game and some of the moments he had even late in his career, like that moment with Shawn Michaels in the ring. It just his acting and the emotion in that moment. Even that late in his career is something special. But I'll go Hogan just because of what he did for wrestling and how he was able to his versatility through the years.
Okay. Next question. Which franchise do you hate more in the NFL? Because these are two hated franchises. One I'm a big fan of, obviously, the New England Patriots. But, growing up in the 90s, you probably hated the Dallas Cowboys, as most people did, as I still do. New England Patriots or the Dallas Cowboys, who do you hate more?
For me, if you would ask me this question 2 years ago, the Patriots were the easy answer. Now it's the Cowboys. Tom Brady's gone. I don't hate the Patriots.
All right.
I at this point I just feel bad for the Dallas Cowboys. Like I don't know if
I never feel bad for them.
Yeah, I don't know if I hate the Cowboys as much as I pity them. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I really hate Patriots. Like there are some of their fans that I borderline hate, as much as hate is a strong word. I've never really hated the Patriots or hate their franchise, but I mean, if we're going to choose between the two, I have more of a dislike for the Patriots franchise and some of the things that they've done versus the Cowboys, who just they suck. And I understand there's that America's team, like somehow like false sense of entitlement that a lot of people hate. But for me, it's Patriots edge them out a little bit.
All right. Now, next one, I've asked this a lot because, and Ben, I might have even asked you when you were on the in your episode before. But now we have seen Tom Brady win a Super Bowl. We saw the Patriots go 7-9. I don't think this book is fully written, but a lot of people are making their judgments. And who's more responsible for the success of the New England Patriots? Tom Brady or Bill Belichick?
Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, I mean, my answer.
Yeah.
Bill Belichick. I mean, Brady just basically brought New England to Tampa. I mean, it was the same thing. You have a top 10 defense. You have a bunch of stud playmakers. It was the same thing Bill Belichick provided him for 19 years of his career. What's the difference? I'm going Belichick all day. Patriots will be in the playoffs next year. Bold prediction right now. You heard it first.
I could see. I think they're going to spend, and I agree. Get a quarterback. That's really what you got to do.
Yeah, I'll go Bill as well, with the caveat that it could change with a big enough sample size. I said it this year because I have a couple of friends on Facebook who after week 4 of the season was already talking about how it's now clear that it's Brady. In this COVID season, the things that happened to the Patriots roster early, and then with all of the with believing that Cam Newton was the guy, and then also the injuries that they faced throughout the season. I don't know if this season is any indication of anything, because like Nick said, I mean, Tom Brady, as he got the job done, I'll give him that. He got the job done this year, but he was gifted arguably the best roster in the NFL, and got a lot of the guys that he wanted. So if you put that up against maybe Bill gets a quarterback this year and all the guys are back, and they have a lot of money to spend this year. I mean, if he goes to the AFC Championship or he goes to the Super Bowl this year and Tom Brady doesn't, then what are we talking about? So, again, I'll go with Bill just because of what he did with the roster throughout those years. As much as Tom Brady gave them some money in the cap, Bill used it wisely, and gave him the top 5, top 10 defenses for basically 98% of his career. I'll go with Bill for now, and say that if it's shown over the next few years that Bill is just a losing coach, then that might change.
Yeah, I think that, and that's how a lot of people have answered it too, because I bring it up on the show because in sports media or sports, I mean, it's constantly brought up,
Yep.
and it's just an interesting question. I don't think it's fully written.
Right.
We'd have to see what But at the end of the day, if Belichick retired tomorrow, I mean, he's a lot older. You don't live forever. I'd still kind of say that he bought the groceries. He was the one that got the players there. So again,
Right.
the players have to go out and win, right? And Belichick has said that himself. But if you look at all the successful teams, they were built. You know what I mean? Doesn't matter what sport it is. Here's two leagues that haven't really picked up huge here in the United States, but we have two New England teams, the Revolution, we have the Boston Cannons. Better league, the MLS or Major League Lacrosse?
Oh, MLS. MLS. I mean, I didn't even know there was a Major League Lacrosse. I didn't even know.
Yeah.
Thing? Do they? When's their season?
They played at Harvard. I don't know if they're still there, but yeah.
That's where they should stay.
The Cannons have been around for a while now at this point.
I thought lacrosse was like a sport that you play like if you have like really long hair and you like smoking weed, but you want to play a college sport and you have some level of athleticism. Yeah. I thought lacrosse was like a fake thing.
So here's the thing, Nick. Give it a try. Lacrosse is fun to watch.
Yeah. I'm just messing. I got buddies that play lacrosse.
No, particularly at that level, it's pretty awesome to watch. So I do want to acknowledge like the potential there. If somehow like we can make lacrosse a little bit more popular. Obviously right now I'll go with MLS because obviously in terms of the athletes that are in MLS and the popularity, it's that. But Major League Lacrosse has a lot of potential because it's a fun thing to watch, and the most skilled players in lacrosse are just phenomenal. Are phenomenal athletes. Like it's crazy to see what they can do with a stick and a ball.
And big shout out on the MLS side to my boy, a good friend of mine, Saeed Haji, drafted number 2 by the San Jose Quakes a few years ago. He's going to have a killer season this year in the MLS. Can't wait to watch him kill it and then go over to Europe. Saeed, New Hampshire's right behind you, bro. Always.
Oh, man. I have to check out a game then. And one other thing that I just want there also is now pro lacrosse rugby in New England too and across, but obviously they just started and COVID hit, so hopefully that can take off too. All right, toughest question: blank versus blank. These are two guys that were on the Turkey Bowl team. One I'm more friendly with than the other. I just don't know him as well. But you guys, these are both friends of yours. We got Sean Gill. Or we got Graham Leto. Who are you taking?
Come on. Come on, Dan. I love Sean. He's been one of my best friends since middle school. But Graham Lito is probably the best Turkey Bowl athlete of all time. I mean, maybe you have some guys that were in that National League that I know exists that are pretty special, but when you can run from one end of the field to the other and literally make it look like nobody even came close to touching you, and then at the same time shut down the other team's best offensive player because the kid was a college cornerback. Forget about his offensive game. It's Graham. I mean, good on Sean for taking advantage of the talent that was around him and helping us win 2 championships. But it's Graham, and you know what? Sean would probably chuckle at that question as well. So
I'm gonna take a controversial take, and Sean Gill was my captain. He was my leader in those huddles. He was calling the plays, and Sean Gill is my Tom Brady, and I'm taking Sean Gill. He's the GOAT. I mean, any team that Sean Gill's the quarterback on wins the Turkey Bowl championship. Let's just put it that way. I'm just saying, anytime Sean Gill's a quarterback on a Turkey Bowl team, he wins the championship.
Yeah, and he gets the ball there. That's
he's
all.
Maybe he's not the most talented, but it's not about talent, Ben. Like think about how galvanized Sean could get us in the huddle. the leadership of Sean Gill in the huddle, right? Like I think we're not doing this enough credit here. Give me Sean Gill all day. I'll go to war with Sean.
Awesome. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys, coming on today. It was good. I know I come on your show, I think back in May. So it's just good to have you guys on and glad, you guys are doing well and everything. So, but yeah, we'll have to do this again sometime.
I got to do a quick shout out, Dan, if you don't mind, because I am now part of a weekly podcast with the Infinity Sports Group. You can find them at Infinity Sports Podcast on IG or Sports Infinity 5 on Twitter.
I have co-hosted with them. It's a great program. So definitely check it out, guys. If you love sports, there are some very controversial takes, which makes it that much more interesting.
This guy.
And this show goes live, right, Nick? Am I correct? I mean, I'm sure you guys put it out after, but it does
so
go
you
live.
Can interact. Yeah. Yep. So you can interact with the show. You can feed us questions beforehand if you want. I'm all over the comment section. So if you want to engage me on any of my views, I encourage it. My wife hates it, but I will engage with you all day.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again, guys. Everybody out there, continue to keep your heads up. Wear your masks. Soapy pre-op. Again, man. Just keep running your mouth. I'm not afraid of you. So just do what you got to do. But until next time, let freedom ring.
Later, guys.